All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are going deep on this one.
Deep.
Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace.
Oh, yeah.
We've got like a ton of Goodreads reviews
Really a lot.
giving us all sorts of different takes.
Right.
And we're going to kind of go through all of them
Yeah.
to give you the ultimate cheat sheet
I like it.
to War and Peace.
Nice.
By the end of this, you should be able to like walk into any, cocktail party
Yeah.
and just drop knowledge bombs about War and Peace left and right.
I love it.
So
Yeah.
before we really get into it, I think it's helpful to set the scene a little bit.
For sure.
So think Napoleonic era Russia,
Okay.
world of like glittering ballrooms
Mm-hmm.
and, aristocratic families and these like intense social pressures,
Yeah.
all against this backdrop of, well, War and Peace.
Yeah. Tolstoy really captures like the grandeur of this whole era, but also those little details of daily life.
Right.
And it's that interplay, I think, between those like huge historical events and the personal lives of all these different characters that just make it
Right.
so captivating.
It's kind of like those like, historical dramas that we all binge watch,
Yeah.
but with like
Way more.
way more depth.
Yeah.
And speaking of characters, Tolstoy throws a lot at us.
A lot.
But what's really amazing is how well developed they are.
Yeah, he doesn't give us those typical like one-dimensional figures or anything. We
Right.
get, richly developed individuals
Yeah.
and they each have their own like journey and their flaws and their motivations.
Yeah, and it's that character development that seems to really hook people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the Goodreads reviews are just full of people gushing about Pierre and Andre and Natasha,
Oh, yeah.
like all the
He's
characters.
great.
So let's start with Pierre.
Okay.
So he's this like illegitimate son who all of a sudden inherits a fortune.
Right.
And he's just like constantly wrestling with these big existential questions.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about Pierre is that he's not just like brooding and philosophical all the time. I mean, he's really trying all these different things.
Yeah.
Philosophies, ways of life, from like hedonism to Freemasonry.
Wow.
Tolstoy uses him to explore all these different ideas that were kind of like going around in the 19th century.
It's like he's this like lovable teddy bear
Kind of.
who's like bouncing around between these grand ideas,
Yeah,
trying to find his place in the world.
totally.
And then you have Andre, who is almost like the complete opposite.
Oh.
He starts out like super cynical and disillusioned with society.
Yeah, Andre's story is really interesting.
Yeah.
He thinks meaning is going to come from military glory.
Okay.
Like that's where his true purpose lies.
Yeah.
But then he has this really intense experience on the battlefield,
Right.
and it just like shatters all of his illusions.
Uh,
And he has to reevaluate like his whole worldview. It's through that suffering and introspection that he finally finds a different kind of truth.
he goes from, chasing validation from the outside to like
Looking
really searching for inner peace.
inner peace, exactly.
And then we have Natasha,
Yes.
who is just like,
so vibrant.
yeah, she embodies the vibrancy
And complex.
and complexity of like the human heart.
Totally.
Yeah.
And what's so cool about Natasha is that she's like really flawed, especially when she's young.
Oh, yeah.
She's impulsive.
Uh-huh.
She makes mistakes.
Yeah.
She experiences like amazing love and then terrible heartbreak.
Right.
But what's remarkable is how much she grows
Yeah.
and changes.
Like you really see her mature
Yeah.
throughout the whole novel.
Her coming of age story is set against this whole backdrop of war and societal upheaval.
Right. And it's through characters like Natasha that Tolstoy reminds us that life is just this constant journey of like evolving and learning. Now, even though the title might make you think that it's all about battles and military strategy,
Yeah.
a lot of the reviewers were really captivated by
I bet.
Tolstoy's portrayal of just everyday life,
Right.
the social interactions,
Yeah.
the romance, the family dramas.
All the dramas.
It's like a Russian period drama
Yeah.
with like philosophical depth.
Totally. And one of the things that really stood out to people was how vivid and immersive his scenes are.
Yeah.
He really transports you back to 19th century Russia
Right.
with all the details. And like one reviewer mentioned the scene with a snowy troika ride.
Oh.
And it ends with this romantic stolen kiss
Oh.
under the moonlight.
That's beautiful.
I know.
So we've got love, loss, betrayal, duels, religious awakenings. It's like
He throws everything in.
he throws everything in.
Yeah.
But he does it in this amazing prose.
His writing style is one of those things that just comes up over and over again in all the reviews.
Now, speaking of Tolstoy's writing,
Mm.
I'm curious about his like philosophy of history. The reviewers mentioned that it plays like a big role
Yeah.
in War and Peace.
Mm-hmm.
And that he had some pretty unusual views.
He did.
So what was that all about?
Yeah, so this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Tolstoy didn't think that history was shaped by powerful individuals
Okay.
making big decisions.
Interesting.
He thought it was more about this combination of all these little events
Okay.
and the choices that like ordinary people make.
Interesting.
And he saw free will as kind of an illusion.
Wow.
You know, he argued that people are basically just swept along by the tide of history.
So he's kind of like challenging that whole great man theory.
Exactly.
Hmm.
He believed that historical events just kind of unfold naturally,
Interesting.
you know, with people playing their roles, often without even realizing it,
Wow.
in this like bigger drama that they don't fully understand.
That's wild.
And you see this perspective woven throughout the whole narrative of War and Peace.
I can see how that would make for a very different kind of historical novel.
It did. Yeah.
And this perspective also really informs how he portrays Napoleon,
Okay.
which is another thing that a lot of reviewers are fascinated by.
Okay.
So Tolstoy portrays Napoleon not as this brilliant military genius that we all learn about in history class,
Right.
but as this flawed figure who's actually swept up in the very forces that he thinks he's controlling.
It's almost like he's using Napoleon as like a case study
Exactly.
for his theory of history.
Totally. Tolstoy was really critical of the whole cult of personality.
Yeah.
Around figures like Napoleon. He believed that giving credit for huge historical shifts to one person was way too simplistic.
Right.
And it ignored all of these other forces at work.
Yeah, I can already see why War and Peace has created so much debate
Do too.
and discussion over the years.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, we have to address like the big elephant in the room.
Oh, you mean?
The length.
Yes, the length.
That's a long book.
It is a long book.
But before we get into some of the criticisms of that,
I think we should talk about why some readers found it to be such an immersive and rewarding experience.
For sure.
So yeah, War and Peace, it's a commitment.
It's a big one.
But a lot of the reviewers said that the length is actually what makes it so rich and immersive.
Right. It's like you step into this time machine and you just get to live with these characters.
For a while.
For a while.
Yeah, and it gives him the space to like really get into the details of the relationships and all the complexities of society and history and everything.
It's true. But I get why some readers might find some parts a little challenging.
Like the tangents.
The tangents, yeah.
Several reviewers mentioned that Tolstoy kind of goes off on these
He does.
deep dives into philosophy or history that sometimes feel a little disconnected from the main story.
Tolstoy was a man with a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
And he was not afraid to share them.
Yeah.
And some people loved those parts. They thought it was like brilliant insight that added to the experience.
Right.
They liked that he was willing to go deep on these complex topics and challenge like conventional thinking.
But others found it distracting.
Yeah.
Like they'd be pulled away.
Right when things are getting good?
From the story.
Right.
Just when things were getting good.
I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Some readers love those moments where they get to like explore these intellectual ideas and others just want the story.
Just want to know what happens next.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of personal preferences, Tolstoy's characters also seem to divide people.
They did.
While most people praised his ability to make these like complex and relatable characters, some found certain characters
a bit much.
Yeah. Like Pierre's endless existential pondering.
Yeah.
And Andrei's like brooding intensity and Natasha's youthful impulsiveness drove some people crazy. One reviewer joked about starting a support group.
Oh, no.
For readers traumatized by Pierre's quest for meaning.
That's funny.
Another reviewer admitted to wanting to shake Andrei and tell him to lighten up.
It's amazing how much we can connect with these characters that aren't even real.
Yeah, to the point where their flaws bug us.
Like they're real people.
Yeah.
But maybe that just shows how good of a writer Tolstoy was.
Yeah.
He makes them feel so real that we can't help but react to them.
Like they're real.
Yeah.
And those mixed reactions. They extend to the ending, too.
To the ending.
Some readers found it really satisfying.
Okay.
Others felt it was a little...
Anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some debate about whether he really tied up all the loose ends.
Oh, interesting.
In a way that felt conclusive.
Yeah.
One reviewer even wondered if Tolstoy just got tired of writing.
After like 1,200 pages?
After 1,200 pages.
Yeah.
And was like, all right, let's wrap this up.
I can see why someone might think that.
Yeah.
But you have to think about what Tolstoy was really trying to do.
Yeah.
He wasn't just trying to write a typical novel
Right.
with a neat little ending.
With everything tied up?
Yeah, he was exploring these much bigger themes.
About life.
About life.
History.
History.
The human condition?
Exactly. And for some readers, it's that open-endedness, that refusal to give easy answers that makes War and Peace so thought-provoking.
Right.
And so powerful.
It leaves you with questions.
Yeah.
Interpretations to debate.
Totally.
Like the story continues even after you close the book.
It does.
And with all the praise and criticism and debate about the book,
yeah.
there's one thing that everybody agreed on.
What's that?
Tolstoy could write.
He could write.
The reviewers constantly praised his prose.
Oh, yeah.
His ability to paint these vivid scenes.
And just his command of language.
Yeah, even those who struggled with the philosophical tangents or found the characters annoying, they had to acknowledge
that the writing was beautiful.
Yeah, reviewers used phrases like breathtaking.
Wow.
A symphony of words.
Nice.
A painting come to life.
I love that.
To describe his writing.
It's true.
And it's interesting how even in this huge, epic novel, he still captures these small, intimate details that make the characters and their stories so compelling.
It's like he's giving us this magnifying glass to look at the human experience, you know, to see the beauty and complexity
in the everyday.
In just everyday moments.
Now we can't talk about War and Peace without talking about the historical context.
Oh, of course not.
It's not just a backdrop to the story.
Yeah.
It's like this living, breathing element that shapes the characters and their destinies.
Totally. Tolstoy doesn't shy away from the realities of war.
Yeah.
You know, the political intrigue and the social dynamics of Russia.
Yeah.
He puts you right there in that world. You experience history through his character's eyes.
And he clearly did his research.
He did.
Reviewers often mention
Yeah.
how carefully he recreated historical events. He even interviewed veterans of the Napoleonic Wars.
Wow.
That commitment to accuracy really adds this layer of realism that makes War and Peace more than just fiction.
More than just a story.
It's like a portal to the past.
It is.
It's amazing how literature can do that.
I know.
Connect the past and present.
Yeah.
Help us make sense of our own stories.
Our own histories.
And the bigger historical narratives that shape our lives.
Exactly.
And in the case of War and Peace,
it
makes us think about how these historical forces are still at play.
It's still relevant.
Today.
Yeah.
The themes of war and power, social change, searching for meaning.
It's all still happening.
They're just as relevant today as they were back then.
It's incredible that Tolstoy was able to create something that goes beyond
its time.
The historical setting.
Yeah.
And speaks to everyone.
Yeah, it's a testament to his genius.
It is.
So that's kind of our main takeaway, I think, from this deep dive.
Yeah.
War and Peace.
It defies categorization.
It defies easy categorization.
It's history. It's philosophy. It's a love story.
It's a social commentary.
All in one.
All rolled into one.
One epic saga.
It's a book that asks big questions.
Yeah.
Challenges our assumptions.
Makes you think.
And really makes you think about life and death.
And everything in between.
And everything in between.
Yeah.
And even with its flaws and challenges and the length.
Yeah.
It has the power to change how we see the world.
Totally.
And ourselves.
Absolutely.
So as you start your own journey through War and Peace, remember to go into it with an open mind.
Open mind.
A willingness to be challenged.
Be challenged.
And a sense of adventure.
Yeah, you might just discover your new favorite book.
You might.
It might stay with you forever. And if you find yourself getting bogged down by those tangents. Or frustrated with the characters.
Yeah.
Just remember that even the best books have their imperfections.
Yeah,
it's those imperfections that make a story more human.
More relatable.
And more meaningful.
Well said.
Thank you.
So before we go to part 3, where we'll talk about some of the political themes and all the different opinions on this huge book, let's go back to that question you asked earlier about fate versus free will.
Yes.
I bet our listeners have been thinking about that one.
It's a question people have been debating for centuries. And War and Peace is like the perfect way to look at it.
Yeah.
You see these characters making choices big and small with all this historical stuff going on around them.
Yeah, and these social rules, too.
Yeah, it's like Tolstoy is saying that we have the power to make decisions, but our choices are always tied to these bigger things that we can't control.
Yeah, things outside of ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Tolstoy's characters are always struggling with this.
Yeah.
They want love and meaning and purpose, but they're also caught up
in the
currents of war and society.
Right, and just life in general.
Life, yeah.
Right.
And through their struggles, Tolstoy makes us think about the same things.
Yeah.
Like, are we really in charge of our own destinies?
Right.
Or are we just actors in this big play
that we don't even really understand?
That we don't understand,
Yeah, it's a question that doesn't have a simple answer.
Nope.
And that's part of what makes War and Peace so powerful.
So powerful.
It makes us confront these big mysteries.
Yeah.
About why we're here.
What it all means.
What it all means.
Yeah.
As we go deeper into this deep dive, we see that politics play a big part in shaping this world.
Totally. A lot of the Goodreads reviews talk about the political stuff going on beneath the surface of the novel. People praise how Tolstoy explores power and social class.
Right.
And how war impacts society.
And Tolstoy was living in a time of huge social and political change in Russia.
Totally.
So those observations are like woven into the story.
Yeah. Like one reviewer mentioned how he contrasts the wealthy aristocracy with the poor peasants. It's like this reminder that power and inequality affect real people's lives.
And then there's his take on Napoleon.
Yeah.
Which we talked about earlier.
We did.
It's not some glorification of war.
Not at all.
Some people saw it as a critique of authoritarianism.
Interesting.
And the dangers of blindly following a leader.
Yeah.
It's like he's telling us to think for ourselves.
Yeah.
To question those in power.
To be critical.
And to see that any system can be corrupted.
Totally.
And it's not just the leaders who are under the microscope.
Right.
Tolstoy also looks at how war affects
everyone.
Regular people.
He doesn't shy away from the brutality.
Yeah.
But he also shows the compassion and resilience.
The humor, even.
Even the humor.
And comes out in tough times.
Yeah. That ability to show both sides is what makes War and Peace so powerful.
Right.
Now, it's important to remember that Tolstoy's own political views are complicated.
Yeah.
People interpret them in different ways.
Yeah, the Goodreads reviews.
All over the place.
Had all sorts of different takes.
Some people thought he was super progressive.
Okay.
Others thought he was more traditional.
Interesting. It just goes to show that when we're reading...
Especially older books.
Yeah, especially older books.
From different cultures.
We have to think about the historical context.
Yeah.
And not just put our own modern ideas onto the text.
Absolutely.
But I think it's safe to say that Tolstoy was a very moral person.
Yeah.
He cared about justice.
Yeah.
Equality.
For sure.
Finding meaning in a world that's full of suffering.
Those are concerns we all share, no matter what time period we live in.
Right. It's amazing how relevant War and Peace still is.
So, before we wrap up this deep dive, we have to mention all the different reactions that people had.
The Goodreads reviews.
Oh, yeah.
Were all over the place.
From, like, total love to total hate.
Some people thought it was life-changing. Others thought it was boring.
Some people loved Pierre.
Yeah.
Others wanted to shake him.
It's amazing how one book can make people feel so many things.
It is.
It just shows you how powerful art is.
Yeah.
It can make you think.
Yeah.
And feel.
Yeah.
And argue.
And debate.
Yeah. And question everything.
Exactly. And War and Peace gives you a lot to think about.
It does.
It's a book that you have to wrestle with. Take apart.
And talk about.
And talk about.
And we're going to be thinking about it.
Oh, for sure.
For a long time.
Long after this deep dive is over.
Yeah. So as we say goodbye to 19th century Russia. And come back to the present.
Yes.
We encourage you, dear listener.
Yes.
To go on your own journey.
Through War and Peace.
Through War and Peace.
Don't let the length scare you.
Yeah. Or the complexity.
Go in with an open mind.
Be curious.
And be ready to be challenged.
You might just discover a new favorite.
You might.
And who knows? You might even find some answers.
To those big questions.
About life and fate and what it all means.
Happy reading.
Happy reading, everyone.